obviously, too, it is 9/11, 14 years ago. It's very strange. The strangest thing for me about it is my daughter's response to it, because she's now 10. The first thing this morning, she showed me an Instagram thing that she had posted, which was a meme going around, like a picture of the towers, and it basically said, to honor the people who died in this, no scams, no stupid things today. I mean, it was actually sort of save
your scamming for tomorrow.
Well, I mean, it was just like, on Instagram, a lot of weird stuff goes around, and this is like this is the way like a kid responds to it. A kid who's grown up. I mean, there's two different things here that are sort of commingling. One is 9/11 was already 4 years in the past. And she grew up with sort of our post 9/11 mentality on some level, a lot of which I don't think she's conscious of. But, she grew up saying, like, they're building the Freedom Tower, which we no longer call it that. That was the sort of the George Bush era name for the World Trade Center. And she is sort of fascinated by that building, which has been now built in southern Manhattan. In many ways, the way I was when I was her age, coming down to visit New York and taking a picture of that building when I was like 8 or 9, right after it was built. Or I should say the two of them. But also the commingling of social media in a way where this is the way that we mark this day, by saying no silly stuff on Instagram in the way that we normally do. Now, it's all a little bit weird, and I have sort of a weird response to it. I want to talk to Cliff a little bit about this too, but there was a great piece that Rick Perlstein wrote back in 2011. So I guess it was on the 10-year anniversary. About the solidarity that was squandered, and really the how the country changed. And you can actually, reading that piece now, you can see how it implicated, sort of one theme in his book, The Bridge, which was how we are now a much more fearful country than we were at the time. That, we had terrorist attacks in the 70s. And I think he came on, and the one that really sort of surprised me was the one where I think 20 people were killed in LaGuardia Airport. Was it the 70s or the mid-80s? The 70s. Puerto Rican. And the idea of even a bomb scare at LaGuardia now, the implications of that would seem enormous. But I never, at the time in New York, I didn't quite have the emotional response of solidarity, I think, that some write about. I guess I was a little bit skeptical of that from the beginning, but I don't know that I was aware of just how bad it would become. How fearful the country would become, what it would lead to. Because it really did dominate our politics. At the time, I've said this many times before, and that the Newsweek magazine at the time, which was a relevant magazine, which existed, I guess, in 2001. There was a time, for those of you who are under the age of 30, there was a time when magazines were actually important in this country. And Newsweek and Time were sort of like, if something hit Newsweek and Time, it meant that it was either completely over or it was going to panic the country. So if it was like a fad, you knew that fad was over. But if it was anything that would sort of scare the country or whatever, it would really grip the country for a bit. And the cover of Newsweek at that time was going to be about the rift on the Supreme Court that came out of the 2000 election. And I was completely obsessed with that up until probably September 11th, 2001. Became less obsessed about it, but I was completely obsessed about it to the point where I had made a movie that was the jumping off point. And that movie, many people have, well, to the extent that anybody's seen it, you're all listening to me now because it was, I've never released it other than to send it out we made a DVD, and it was a movie about Joe Lieberman's fake son who was upset about the election and was inculcated to commit a terrorist attack in New York City by blowing up a building. And it was at the time a comedy. Now it's a weird movie and of course the movie itself sort of never became what I wanted it to become because some of the major premises became sort of radioactive, and we were about, I think, 8 weeks into editing on 9/11. And I think had that election gone a different way, and by election I mean had the Supreme Court decided it in a different fashion, I think things would have been very different. The Democratic Party just more or less, liberals in general, more or less caved, just collapsed. And we're completely cowed into everything from the Iraq War to sort of draconian expansion of our national security state, et cetera, et cetera. And I think was it Russ Feingold was the only person in the Senate, anyways, to vote against the Patriot Act. Subsequently, too, I think that the reason why George Bush won re-election in 2004 had everything to do with 9/11 in one way or another. And I don't know that we've ever recovered from the damage we did to ourselves after 9/11. Certainly recovered from that day in and of itself. Obviously, there's, there's 100,000 people, 50,000 people who are suffering from the cleanup they did, first responders. And, I'm quite confident that Congress is going to reinstate the program that takes care of those people. A lot of people getting cancer from first responders who had been down there, and maybe it's closer to, 30,000. I can't remember. Maybe it's only like 10,000 of those people who had worked down there and have gotten sick from it. But, and obviously the people who lost people on that day. But beyond that, we have recovered physically from that. But I don't think this country is even close to recovering. And I don't know that we ever will, frankly. Because we had that conversation with Arkin. The idea that 9/11 happened on that at that time in terms of where we were technologically speaking, I think is also very problematic. because it allowed for a response. All of the worst impulses of the national security state and the fear that people felt, and the idea of also, 24-hour cable news and everything that combined, all of the technologies combined to exacerbate and to perpetuate and amplify our worst impulses and our worst fears. So that's where we are. I'll get Cliff's reaction to it, too, and we got a lot of other things to talk about as well. Next week is the Republican debates, and it continues unabated. I mean, in many ways, Donald Trump, I don't know, I would put him directly as a response to 9/11 in terms of what happened with the conservative movement. I have a feeling we were already headed in that direction way before then. But they certainly grew exponentially.